Being a fat guy, I love the winter. And the thing I love most about winter is the winter comfort food like chicken and turkey pot pies. Just like my nanny used to make when I was a kid. But this time, we're gonna be using some leftover smoked turkey. Stay tuned and I'll be sharing with you how to make the most amazing chicken and turkey pot pie. And we're gonna be baking those pies on my Kamado Joe. Hello and welcome to Grillin' and Chillin' with Coleman. And unless the real Coleman is still in a food coma from all the turkey he ate, I'm Coleman. My goal is to help the grilling and barbecue enthusiasts become the backyard grill master they've always wanted to be. Got a question for you. Who else remembers their grandmother fixing chicken or turkey pot pies when they were little? Man, I can still picture mine standing at the wood-burning stove up at the cabin the day after Thanksgiving, taking all the leftover chicken and turkey and turning it into the most amazing pot pie that I've ever eaten. Now, through much trial and error, I've finally perfected her recipe. Now today, I'm going to be making up individual pot pies in these 18-ounce oven-ready soup crocks. And the recipe amounts I'll be giving you today will make 4 of these. Now, if you want to pick up some of these, I'll go ahead and put a link below in the description. Let's get to cooking. Let's start off with the meat. Now, after Thanksgiving or a big get-together here in the GNC kitchen, there's often leftover chicken or turkey. Now, if you want some great ideas on smoking a turkey, I'll put a link right up here to a video that might help you. But instead of making that leftover turkey into boring sandwiches, let's go ahead and put it into a simple pot pie. But there's really no reason to wait until you have those leftovers. Once you make and eat these the first time, you're going to want to make them more often. Any poultry will work for this recipe, but my favorite is the dark meat. So when I make them, I start off with boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Start off by trimming up the thighs of any excess fat or skin left over by your butcher. Then grill them over direct heat until they hit an internal temperature of 165 degrees. You're not going to want to add any seasoning to the chicken at this time because we'll be seasoning it later. Then set them aside to cool and shred them up into bite-sized pieces. Next, peel 2 medium-sized russet potatoes and dice them up into 1/2-inch squares. Now, we don't bake these pot pies long enough to actually cook the potatoes, so we're going to need to give them a quick boil to soften them up a little bit. Now, I typically boil mine for about 5 minutes, but don't add them into the water until it comes to a complete boil, then toss them in and start your timer. After 5 minutes, drain off the water and run them under cool water to keep them from cooking any further and set them aside. Place that same pot back on the stove over low heat and pour in about 1.5 cups of chicken stock. Then drop in 1 chicken bouillon cube to kick up the flavor. Stir it until the cube completely dissolves, then remove it from the heat. We're going to be using this later. Now we need to make our roux. And as my honey had to remind me several times, there's an X at the end of that word. Why? I don't have any idea. I think the French are just messing with us. The roux is going to be used to thicken up that chicken gravy, and it's very simple to make. Start off by adding 1.5 sticks of unsalted butter to a large skillet and melt it over medium-high heat. Then slowly stir in 1/2 white onion that has been peeled and cut up into small pieces. Next, add in 3 cloves of peeled and chopped garlic and 1/2 cup of chopped celery. And saute it all together until the onions are translucent. And once they are, add in 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Reduce the heat down to medium and continue mixing it all together for a few minutes. This will help cook that flour and get rid of the raw flavor. Once the flour has browned a little, slowly pour in the chicken stock. Keep stirring as you pour it in to avoid clumping. A whisk is really helpful here. Once it's blended thoroughly, stir in 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. Get it all mixed together until you can no longer see the white cream. Now, this is the white sauce that makes this pot pie so good. At this point, you're going to want to stir in your shredded chicken or turkey. And then we're going to add in 1.5 cups of frozen mixed vegetables. Now, this stuff has green beans, carrots, corn, and peas in it. Now, you're not going to want to use the canned stuff because it'll get all mushy on you, and nobody likes mushy vegetables. So the frozen stuff works really well for this. And then mix it up really well so everything is coated in that nice gravy. Now let's go ahead and add in our seasoning. The first thing I'm going to add is a teaspoon of AP rub. And this stuff includes a little bit of salt, pepper, and garlic. Next I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. Then I have a teaspoon of sage, a teaspoon of rosemary, and lastly a teaspoon of thyme. And let's get it all mixed up together well. Make sure that seasoning gets distributed throughout the entire mix. Man, that's looking really good. That gravy is thickening up really nice. All right, we got that seasoning distributed throughout. And the last thing we're gonna add is gonna be our potatoes. And I like to add these last, because if you add them a little sooner, and all this stirring tends to make them a little mushy. Now these are done al dente, so they're a little undercooked, but we're gonna add them in now, and then they'll finish cooking when we get them on the grill. So we're just gonna kind of lightly fold these into the mix. Man, that's looking good. Man, I wish you can smell this, guys. This stuff is smelling amazing. I can't wait to get it in the pie fillings. Let me turn that heat up just a little bit. Perfect. All right, it's looking really good. It's time to go ahead and get this off the heat. You're gonna wanna put it into the pie fillings when it's a little cooled off, because the heat of it will just start melting and destroying that bottom crust. All right, now it's time to go ahead and get our grill ready. But before we do, if you're getting some value from this video, please click the like button below and click that red subscribe button. I'm gonna be using my Kamado Joe today to actually bake these pot pies. A little known fact about the Kamado Joe is it's actually a convection oven, and it's actually really amazing for baking. I'm gonna be baking our pies today at 400 degrees over indirect heat. Now, if you're using a grill like my Weber kettle, you're gonna wanna push all those coals to one side and bake those pot pies on the other. On my Kamado Joe, I'll be putting the deflector plates in the highest position and then adjusting the top and bottom vents to about halfway open to help maintain that 400 degrees. And we're not gonna be using any smoke wood today on the Kamado Joe. When I smoked this turkey, I actually used some hickory wood and it gave that turkey a nice flavor. Now let me go ahead and get this going and then we're gonna get our pie crust ready. For our top and bottom crust today, I'm gonna be using some pre-made chilled puff pastry sheets. Why? Because I hate making pie crust. Now I can remember as a child my God-fearing church-going nanny sitting at the kitchen table making pie crust, and she was cussing like a sailor. Why? Because she hated making pie crust also. So I'm gonna be using these pre-made ones. These things come 1 sheet to a bag, and 1 sheet will do 1 pot pie, so I'm gonna need 4 of these bags today. Now these things can be found in the chilled pastry section of most grocery stores, and they're gonna need to stay chilled till you're ready to use them. Slowly and carefully unroll 1 sheet onto your cutting board. There's really no need to coat the board with flour as they already come on parchment paper. Take your soup crock and check it to make sure that the sheet is large enough. The bottom crust will need to be larger than the top crust as it's going to need to cover the bottom and the sides. Set the crock on the sheet and allow an inch overhang on all sides and cut it with a sharp knife. This one's going to be the top crust. Next, take the remaining crust and start working it into the soup crock, starting at the bottom and working your way up the sides, making sure to work out any air pockets. Try not to stretch the dough as it's going to give you problems later if you do. You're going to have some places on the sides that overlap, but that's okay. When you get to the top, fold the excess over the sides. Then take your knife and trim off all the excess dough on the sides. You want it to overlap the top, but not too far. Let me get the rest of these done and we'll move on to the next step. Now that I got the bottom crust in, I like to give them a short pre-bake. The last thing you want is for that bottom crust to stay raw. To do this, I put them on the Kamado Joe for about 5 minutes and then pull them off. This will really help start cooking the bottom crust and make sure it gets done. I'll let these bake for about 5 minutes and then I went ahead and pulled them off. Let's go ahead and fill them up with our filling. A ladle works really well for this. You want to spoon it in a little bit at a time until it's level with the top of each one of the bowls. Just fill that up. And then you want to level it off with the top so it's even with the top of your bowl. Now it's ready for the top crust. Before we put the top crust on our pot pies, we need to cut in some vent holes to allow the steam to escape while it's cooking. If we don't do that, sometimes the top will pop off or the filling will spill out over the sides. You can do this by cutting some slits in the top crust just like this. But I prefer to do something a little different. I picked up some small cookie cutters on Amazon that'll work perfect. Pick a center point on your top crust and use the cookie cutter to cut a shape out. Yes, I used a star. This is Texas. Then remove the inside of the shape. Now carefully lay the crust onto the top of your pot pie, making sure you center it and not distort the shape you cut out. Then take a fork and lightly press the top crust to the bottom crust. It helps seal it, plus it just looks cool. Then replace the shape you cut out. For the star, I just turn it a little bit and press it down slightly. This creates the vent holes in the top and it just looks unique. The last thing we'll do before it goes on the grill is give it an egg wash. This will help give the top a nice golden color. To do that, mix 1 whole egg in a bowl with 1 tablespoon of water and mix it up. Then brush it on the top crust of your pot pie. Don't put it on too heavy, just enough to give it a shine. Making sure you cover all the surfaces of the crust. Then for a final touch, I sprinkle on just a pinch of kosher salt. Now they're ready for the grill. On the Kamado Joe, I want to place these pies in the center of the grill above the deflector plates. They're only going to be on for about 20 minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and check them in about 15. These pies have been on for about 20 minutes, so let's go ahead and check on them. Man, the crust on these are just perfect. That egg wash gave it a nice golden brown color. Now, if you remember, everything we put into these are already cooked, so all we're looking for is the crust to be done, and it looks like these are done. These need to come off and rest for about 15 minutes, so while they do, let's review what we did. First, we shredded our turkey and pre-cooked our potatoes. Next, we made our roux with the butter, vegetables, and flour. Then we added the rest of our ingredients and seasoned it to taste. We then lit our grill and let it heat up to 400 degrees while we put the bottom crust in our bowls. Next, we pre-baked our bottom crust and filled them with our pie mix. It was then time to put on the top crust and create those vent holes. And lastly, they went back on the grill for 20 minutes to bake. Man, the crust on these turned out just amazing. I wish you could hear how crispy that crust was. These puffy pastry sheets do an amazing job for the top and bottom crust. I've seen some people try to use regular pie crust on these and they just don't turn out like this. Now this thing almost looks too good to eat, but to heck with that, I'm gonna dig in. Come in right here on the side. Want to get some of that crust, some of that mix on the inside. Man, that is so good. That smoked turkey that I put in here came out amazing. Man, you will not regret making one of these. That crust is perfect. The vegetables on the inside turn out nice and crispy. The potatoes are perfectly done. Your family is not going to regret you using the leftover chicken or turkey to make these, but I guarantee you once they have them, they're going to want you to make them all the time. You can see, while this has always been my winter comfort food. There you go, my favorite winter comfort food, and it's the best thing you could do with some leftover chicken and turkey. But once you start making these, you're going to want to make them year-round. Now, I'm sure some of you noticed I only put 3 pot pies on the grill. So here's something I learned. When you have an English Mastiff, things are not safe on the counter. My English Mastiff Shiner was able to get up on the counter and grab one of those pot pies before I got it on the grill, but she was happy, so it looked like I got her approval. I just got in a batch of my Grillin' and Chillin' stickers, and I'd love for you all to have one. Just go to my website and click on the Contact Us tab. Send me your mailing address and I'll ship one out to you, and I'll even pay the shipping. And don't forget to join our Grillin' and Chillin' community on Facebook and Instagram. Leave me a comment below of what you'd like to see in some upcoming videos, because I want to continue to make videos that truly help you become the backyard grill master you've always wanted to be. Thank you again for joining me in the GNC kitchen. If you enjoyed this video, here's a few more you might like. And also hit the subscribe button here and click that like button below. And don't forget to ring the bell. It'll let you know when I've got new videos coming out. I always enjoy spending time with you in the GNC kitchen and sharing my recipes. Now y'all go grill something.